So we're now recording, and I just wanted to note that our project is funded by the European Regional Development Fund through the Ireland Wales Cooperation Programme, and there are plenty of other great projects in that programme as well. So do check out their website and see what else is going on across the Irish Sea. I will hand over to Marianne now to get stuck in with the rest of the event.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Aoife. Diolch yn fawr iawn, a croeso mawr eto I chi gyd bore yma I Port Fest Caergybi. A very warm welcome to everybody attending our Holyhead Port Fest. Now let's hope that my slideshow works. It's just a very quick overview of what we've been doing over the last, well, I suppose we've been properly going for a year or so now. And we have at least another year of project activities ahead of us. So we're hoping that this is a good point to reach out and make connections with many of you. What are we up to? Well, we're working with 5 port towns, all the ones that have ferry crossings and all the ones that are connected across the Irish Sea. And our project has, I suppose, 4 main strands. We are creating community and tourism networks. And how we're doing this is through a variety of ways. We have a project which my group of people in the Centre for Advanced Welsh and Celtic Studies is running, called Creative Connections, Cysylltiadau Creadigol, which reaches across the Irish Sea. We have 12 artists commissioned, and you'll be hearing a little bit more about them from my colleague Martin Crampin very shortly. We also have a wonderful set of films being made, and Aberystwyth University is in charge of those. And again, I'll tell you a little bit more about them in a moment. And we've got some really good projects working around digital heritage, where we're hoping to sort of harness the use of digital technology to bring heritage into people's lives and make it more usable, both in the communities and for visitors to the port towns. Because really the point is to make, well, to help various people and groups in all these different communities to pull out some of the real jewels of heritage, the buildings, the history, the people who have crossed the Irish Sea over the centuries, and help tell some stories about why you might want to stop and explore a port town rather than just stay in your car with the windows up and roll onto your ferry and off the other end. Maybe stay a night and come and explore what the heritage of these places has to offer. Martin, as I said, is going to be telling us a little bit more. We're going to actually be meeting some of the artists involved in the Holyhead side of the project. But here's just a very quick overview of where we've put various people. As you see, we've got a couple floating in the Irish Sea, working across the port towns, but most people are centred in the port towns themselves and are working in a variety of mediums, from spoken word and audio to visual paintings, craft, amazing mixture of things going on. Animation, films is very exciting. You can learn a little bit more about these by going to our website and dropping into the artists' own pages that they're busy working on and setting up at the moment. Aberystwyth University, as I said, is running the strand which will be creating a set of promotional films for the 5 port towns. And they have commissioned a wonderful group, Mother Goose Films, who have been already pretty busy. Some of you may have already had contact with them. And they're in the process of putting together these short and kind of exciting films about the port towns. And if you'd like to know more about that, then get in touch with Rita, who will probably drop her email into the chat for us at this point. Another thing that we've been doing since the beginning really is collecting stories, collecting research stories, heritage stories linked to the different port towns. And up on our website, you can find a whole collection of these that are, and there are many, many more in the pipeline coming through. And the great thing about the story collections is that it has been a real collaborative venture. There's quite a lot of us on the project, and we're all sort of passionate researchers and deep into history and exploring different archives and things. But actually many of the most fascinating contributions are coming through from members of the community who just know about the history of a particular building, or who have a really good story about a pub, or have discovered something about a beached whale. And it's just, this is the space where I feel that we reach out and kind of talk to lots and lots of different types of people. And again, so if there's something about Cargaby, about Holyhead, that you have a really good story to tell, well, write it up, 300 words, we'll find some pictures, we'll edit it, make it fit with the format, send it in to us, and you can join the others on the website. As I said, we would really like to hear about all kinds of different aspects of that Irish Sea connection, and particularly people who've made crossings of interest, any stories to do with the sea and the coast, buildings, lost places. I've been thinking about these, how quickly port towns have to adapt to new forms of infrastructure, just because of their, the way they are, and how quickly spaces get lost, particular places get lost, history might be obliterated because of a new project. Well, tell us about some of these lost places, because that too, I think, would be a really, really interesting strand to the project. Also, how do place names capture the old stories? How do place names reflect something from your past? That might be another exciting way in. So then that really is just a very brief overview of what it is we're trying to do. And today is all about bringing in different voices. We're not going to be talking that much about our work. We're going to hear from lots of different other groups, different people on the ground, people who've worked in different disciplines as well. The other thing that's fascinating about this project is how much we're learning from people who are working in completely different disciplines to our own. So that's been a really good thing. And that then I think is, but probably encapsulates the sort of official line of what it is we do on Ports Past and Present. Of course, the unofficial one is our secret mission to rename what is now known as the Irish Sea as the Welsh Sea, as indeed William Wynne in his map of 1702 quite rightly put it. And diolch yn fawr iawn I Gerald Morgan o Aberystwyth am cynnig y map na I mi. Mae'n neis I weld ar y map fel na. So I'm now going to stop sharing my screen and just talk to you. And I thought I'd just jump round our group, the people who are here today and who from the project, just so that they can introduce themselves and say hi. You've already met Aoife, who's our project manager based in Cork. And the project is actually led by University College Cork. So we're a 4-strand cooperation across the Irish Sea. And that has actually been one of the most lovely things about this project, has been that amazing conversation that we just keep having backwards and forwards. And although we've been deeply frustrated by not being able to hop on a ferry and go over and see our colleagues in Dublin and Rosslare and down in Cork, we have actually seen a lot of them through digital technology, and that these Zoom meetings have in a way helped us work very, very closely together. So there's been pluses on all that. If there's anything else you'd like to say very quickly about your role in the project to everybody?
Not really, and thank you for the lovely words, Marianne. Likewise, it's been a real pleasure for us to work with Welsh colleagues. And no, just really kind of my role is coordinating the project work packages. And one of the lovely things about that is bringing the work packages together, or strands of our project, I should say, together, which is resulting at this point in the project in really lovely new things by the films and the artwork cooperating, or the stories feeding into the films, and all these kind of lovely strands.
Great to see it coming together, isn't it?
It's lovely, so it's very rewarding. But that's all I'll say, really.
Thank you. Thanks, Aoife. I'm going to hand over very briefly then to Martin Crampin, just to say hello. You'll be seeing more of him later on.
Bore da, Shmai. Yeah, you'll be hearing more from me. I should be talking more about the creative connections strand of the project. But yes, I'm based here in Aberystwyth with Marianne and a team at the Centre for Advanced Welsh and Celtic Studies in Aberystwyth. I'm an artist and art historian by training, and do various things. Look after various bits of the website in collaboration with James and others. And so yes, do lots of sorts of different things. But yeah, I'll be speaking more later on. Diolch.
Diolch, Martin. Sarah, would you like to jump in here? Sarah Bayless is our project coordinator at the Ganolfan.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, as Marianne said, my role is as project coordinator, working across all the ports, really. But I suppose the largest part of my role is really community engagement, engaging with individuals and groups in all the ports, and encouraging people to share their stories with us. As Marianne said earlier, that's really what we feel we really where we can help people is to help you tell your stories. So at some point I would very much like to meet people in person, and hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
Diolch, Sarah. Diolch yn fawr. Liz, do you want to say hello since you're managing the chat for us all?
Yeah, morning everybody. Hi, I'm Liz, and as Aoife said, I'll be looking at the chat feed through most of the day, and just to add as well that you can ask a question at any point. So even if it's just, a short way into somebody's talk, if you want to pop a question in there, you don't have to wait till the end. Just put your question in there. And if you'd like me to ask it for you, then let me know and I'll do that. Otherwise, you can unmute and ask a question yourself.
Thank you, Liz. It's great. Do we have Jonathan here? Jonathan, do you just want to put your hand up and say hi?
Bore da, agus Giadydd from Cork. My name is Jonathan Evershed, and I'm a researcher on the project based at UCC. And I wear a lot of different hats on the project. I'm the project's resident Brexit expert for my sins. But I'm very interested in recording your stories about Holyhead, about the connections between Holyhead and Ireland, Holyhead and Dublin in particular. I've had the pleasure of getting to know some of the people that I can see on my screen this morning already, to record and to tell the stories of these crossings and the role that they've played in the life of Holyhead, in your lives, in your families' lives, and I look forward to much more of that to come. So it's lovely to join you all in Holyhead this morning, and I look forward to seeing you actually in Holyhead as soon as it becomes possible to do so.
Diolch yn fawr, Jonathan. Rita, are you here? Do you want to just put your hand up?
Good morning, bore da pawb. My name is Rita Singer. I'm based at Aberystwyth University, and my job is the development of short documentary films. And I already had the pleasure to talk to some of you this week and some of you next week. So I'm really looking forward to that. And yeah, without your stories, we wouldn't be able to do these films because we're centering them directly about the community in each port and the stories they would like to share, to tell people who are traveling through the ports that it is worth to actually put in a stop and explore the port towns within their own rights. So I feel very privileged in that regard, that I can more or less explore the port towns with the help of the interviews we're doing and also with the little films that are coming out of this. So thank you very much. And if there's anyone going to tune in today who is based around Rosslare and Dublin Port, those films we're still going to develop. But so far, thank you for everybody who has already been in touch with helping us develop the Holyhead film. We've had some really, really great material come out of it this week. So thank you very much.
Diolch, Rita. Thank you. And I'm just going to ask Catherine to jump in as our representative from Rosslare. Then I think we'll have heard from all 4 strands of the project at that point. Hi, Catherine. Bore da, welcome.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Good morning, everyone. It's been fabulous getting to know the stories of the Welsh ports and the Irish ports. I was not aware of this Irish Sea to Welsh Sea Plan, and I'm not sure that Wexford County Council can support it. I'm based in the Office of the Environment Department in Wexford County Council. I'm the project officer for Rosslare Port, as Marianne said. But what's been really interesting is that it's impossible just to learn about Rosslare Port. All these 5 places are inextricably linked with one another. You can't really fully understand one without having some understanding of the others. So I've really enjoyed that. I look forward to hearing more about Holyhead this morning. And as I always say, if anybody'd like to get in touch with the story of a connection between Rosslare and Holyhead, I'd be delighted. Or just the story about Rosslare, whatever you'd like, I'd be delighted to hear from you. Thanks very much, everyone.
Diolch yn fawr, Catherine. Thank you very much. There are other project members lurking, but I think maybe the best thing is if we jump in during the day and perhaps hear from them. And because I'd like to crack on now with our first session, which is focusing on coastal communities and on issues of sustainability, particularly thinking about the coast. I'm really delighted to kick off. We're going to take the long view, I think, and start with a project, a sister project, also funded by the European Union, from Cherish, which is looking at climate change and coastal heritage. And I think we have here Professor Sarah Davis, who is based at Aberystwyth University and has been a driving force behind Cherish. And I've heard her speak a few times, and she's got some fascinating material to share. Sarah, are you there?
I am, yes. Hello, nice to see
Lovely.
you all. Yeah, so
do you want to share a screen, or
yes, yeah, if that's that's okay. Yeah, great. I'll make sure that's all working now.
Brilliant. Over to you then. Thanks ever so much, Sarah.
Okay,
really pleased.
Great, no problem. You just okay, is that working okay? Are you seeing the right display screen?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so thanks very much for the introduction, and thanks for the invitation to speak to you all today. Bore da pawb. And it's nice to be here, sort of hearing more about a sister project, as Mary said, and we're a little bit further on. We're 4 years into the Cherish project now, and as Mary said, we're focusing on climate change and the risks to coastal heritage. And we're 4 partners: Aberystwyth University, the Royal Commission on the Ancient Historic Monuments of Wales, and our Irish partners are the Discovery Programme, Centre for Archaeology and Innovation in Ireland, and the Geological Survey of Ireland. And we're taking a approach to look at a series of key sites around the coast of Ireland and Wales to monitor, map sites at risk, to understand more about their history. That's going to help us to establish baseline conditions for future change with the present and future threats of climate change. But we also want to understand more about the longer term trajectory of change, the history of past climate and storminess, and how the landscape has changed over millennia and through more recent historical times as well. I think there's some interesting connections there with ports past and present as well, in terms of stories about past weather that would be interesting to explore and share. So we've got this sort of multifaceted approach, but really climate change and coastal heritage, I think, is a really emerging area in the climate change debate. There's a lot of focus on infrastructure, impacts on communities in very real and practical ways, and rightly so. And the heritage aspect has perhaps been hidden or not necessarily highlighted. However, communities, individuals, institutions, we all care about our heritage, and often our heritage is very important to a local community. And the discussing those impacts around climate change and the impacts on coastal heritage is a way into having a conversation about climate change and thinking through change over time. How do we live in a dynamic and changing environment? What lessons can we learn from the past? And also what's in store for us in the future? And of course, there are a number of impacts around the coast, which I'm sure those of you living in coastal communities will be all too aware of, particularly storms, how that might change with climate change, the associated impacts of sea level rise, But we're also seeing other impacts, increasing rainfall, intensity of rainfall, and drought and rising temperatures can actually help to reveal some hidden archaeological features around our coast as well. There's a whole range of impacts that we're interested in. I think having those conversations about the impacts of climate change on coastal heritage can feed into a number of the well-being goals that we have here in here as part of the Welsh Government sort of approach to well-being and environmental change as well. So I guess we were kind of at first hand experiencing the impacts of climate change on our coastal heritage. Quite early in the project, we were hoping to get out to the Ynysoedd Moel-Froniau, the Skerries, to do some mapping and monitoring of features out there, but we're thwarted by the beast from the east, which I know had a devastating impact on Holyhead Marina and still sort of recovering from the effects of that now, and then ongoing weather-related challenges plus COVID has meant we haven't been able to get back there. We have commissioned LiDAR, so these sort of high-resolution surveys around a number of sites around a number of islands around Wales, and this is part of our broader toolkit of change, where we're doing high-resolution monitoring, we're taking sediment cores from coastal lakes and lagoons, we're mapping from air and from sea to provide this sort of integrated approach to investigating what's going on with our coastal heritage and associated weather and climate impacts. And we're working at a range of sites around Ireland and Wales. We've done a lot of work up in the northwest part of Wales in Gwynedd and on Ynys Môn as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that shortly. But we're also working around Cardigan Bay down to Stackpole in the south of Pembrokeshire, and in Ireland we're working from Dublin around the Wexford and Waterford coast and over to Kerry. I'm just going to give you some examples from the work that we've been doing in the area around Caergybi and Ynys Môn, and this is Ynys Siriol, Puffin Island, and our colleagues from the Royal Commission, the Ancient Historic Monuments, have been able to go out here. It's a privately owned island, and so it's not readily accessible to the public. And one aspect of the project is to perhaps try to bring some of this heritage on shore and make and develop products and develop information that might make the sites more accessible when you can't actually visit. So there's this thick scrub woodland on the island. It's a notable reserve conservation value for the birds, but it also has a medieval heritage with a medieval church tower and wider monastic remains. And our colleagues have been out mapping and doing very detailed surveys to capture the state of this heritage at present, so that again it provides a baseline for future change. And the LiDAR imagery from the islands, say this example is from Puffin Island and Ynys Siriol here, it is revealing hidden archaeology that we can't necessarily see through the undergrowth, and revealing evidence of cultivated fields and more detail about the medieval enclosures. So we'll be able to do to gather this information remotely and provide a more detailed history for the island, and to map and provide new archaeological interpretation of some of these features. So that's one aspect, this sort of monitoring and recording of what we have there. Now, our colleagues at the Geological Survey of Ireland are bringing in their skills in the offshore environment to provide high-resolution mapping of the seabed around some of our key coastal and island features. And that provides a sort of seamless onshore-offshore mapping of the environment, so we can understand more about the broader landscape history, what's submerged, and how that relates to what we can see onshore. In the marine environment also, we're investigating some indicator shipwrecks both in Ireland and Wales, to explore the impacts of climate change on how these submerged heritage is being preserved. And again, that provides an opportunity to make some of this heritage more accessible with the sorts of data and products that we're developing. The part of the project that I'm involved in focuses on a much longer term history of environmental change in our study areas, and we're using a whole range of techniques to investigate past environmental change to provide a better understanding of the longer term context of climate change. We're worried about what's going on in the future and what's around the corner for us, but how does that relate to the longer term history of landscape evolution? And in the southwest part of Ynysmon in Anglesey, we've got a number of sites which have clearly changed dramatically over the centuries and the millennia. We've got extensive dune systems which are well known for having mobilized during the medieval period. There's some wonderful historical records of sand inundation and movement and impacts on communities. But what do we know about that longer term history? How unusual is that kind of activity? And so we've been taking sediment cores from sites like Llyn Coron, which is just behind the sand dune system at Aberfraw. And we've retrieved sediment cores which identify distinct sand units, which give us an indication of previous build-up of sand dunes and activity over the last 3,000 years. There's some distinctive phases around 3,200 years ago, around 2,000 years ago, and around 500 years ago, as well as that later medieval and more recent activity. It's providing an insight into how quickly these landscapes can change. Over even longer time periods, we've also taken sediment cores from Llyn Maelog, which is an important freshwater site just on the edge of Rosslare. And when we cored that site, we revealed evidence of past sea level change. So around 7,500 to 7,000 years ago, this was a marine environment. The site was open to the sea. So, you know, gives an idea of you know, really quite, you know, dramatically different landscape to what we see today. And it gives us an idea of how long this, you know, this sort of freshwater lake has been in existence, probably about 6,500 years. We've been working with the local community there. We've had some volunteers get in touch to give us information about when submerged peats have been exposed. And we're really keen to share that material and what we've been doing there with the local community. We're hoping to organise some events soon to share what we've been doing and discuss what that means. And as well, we've been working further around the coast in Gwynedd, and particularly one of our sort of key sites has been the Iron Age hill fort of Dinas Dinlle, which is something of a poster child for climate change and coastal heritage, because it is literally being eroded and falling into the sea. We were able to undertake the first excavations there recently, and working on the data from those, and revealed you know, a really impressive Iron Age stone roundhouse structure. There will be further excavations there. These will be led by Gwynedd Archaeological Trust and the National Trust. So part of what we're doing is kind of setting studies in motion that then can be taken further by our partner organisations as well. And we're also planning excavations at Caervai near St David's this summer. And our colleagues over in Ireland are busy excavating at the moment over at Ferreters Cove on the Dingle Peninsula. So there's lots going on at the moment after a stalling of activity due to COVID. So we're very keen to get back out there. So that's just a very brief overview of what we've been doing over the last 4 years. And we've got lots more to do yet. We've got another 2 years to run. You know, the coastal monitoring, the longer term records of change, we're hoping to use to have those conversations about climate change. Sometimes those can be difficult and challenging, but perhaps there's stories of hope in there as well, how societies and communities have always adapted to a changing environment, particularly at the coast, which is so dynamic. So yeah, be really interested to hear more from you, particularly about weather and climate stories that you've all experienced. So thank you very much.
Diolch, Sarah. Fascinating stuff. I'm currently writing a book about travel in Wales, and our favourite notorious poet, Iolo Morgannwg, writes in a letter in 1799 that he could write a much better tour of Wales than any of these English tourists who come in and write them, because he would include the stories of Cancher Gwaelod and Maes Helyg. That is to say, he would also guide you to the lands under the sea, as well as the lands above the sea. And I like the idea of a coast as, when we think of coastlines, they're so embedded on our minds as the identity of a country, particularly Wales. You think of Wales, you think of its coastline. The idea that that could shift and that it might not be the shape of the country is, I think, both sort of imaginatively stimulating as well as, you know, scientifically being proven by your project. It's a really fascinating work that you're doing there. I think if we move on to Evan, and then we hope to have 10 minutes when we can talk a little bit about coastal issues in general with everybody. So thank you again, Sarah, and I'd like to invite Evan Milner now. Evan, ydych chi yno?
Ydw, dwi yma, ydw, diolch.
Dyma ni. Ydych chi'n mynd i rannu sgrin eich hunan, neu ydych chi'n moyn i Martin wneud e?
Na, trio rhannu fo rwan.
Ydych chi'n trio rannu nawr, okay, brilliant. Evan comes to us from the Ynys Cybi Landscape Partnership, again, so highly relevant to this conversation about the shapes of coastal places and all the things that happen along the coast that create the environment for the port towns to flourish. Felly, diolch yn fawr i chi, Evan, a bant â chi.
Bore da, chroeso i chi gyd yma bore yma. Welcome to you all this morning. I'd also like to say thank you for the invitation to come and speak to you today. It's a great opportunity for us as a partnership to come and talk about the work that we're hoping to do. Unlike the other presentation we've just seen, we are right at the start of our project. So we are 6 months in, and there are 2 of us at the moment. We're hoping to recruit for later on as well. But what I'd like to do from this morning is just let you know about our project and what we're trying to do to raise awareness of Caergybi, Ynys Cybi, and the heritage that belongs to it. So the first bit I thought I'd just let you see is the project area. So we are a National Lottery Heritage Fund funded project through what was the Landscape Partnership Scheme. This has now changed. There is similar funding available now for heritage landscape scale projects. But when we were applying, we had to define an area, and obviously Ynys Cybi fit into that quite nicely, being an island off Anglesey and having its own heritage values. So it's a project that's worth just under 2 million. We are funding it, as I said, through the lottery. It's also the County Council is funding elements of it as well, and obviously there's quite a large chunk of what's left of European money, but obviously that will be coming to an end quite quickly, probably next year or the year after that. The main focus of heritage lottery schemes is that engagement with local communities to understand what they want out of a partnership scheme, what they understand about their heritage, and how we can help them learn more about their heritage as well. We have a programme of activities. Linked to that are 21 separate projects within the scheme, and they range in everything from sustainable land management right through to community engagement and interpretation. And obviously one of the programs for the ports past and present is the app that people will be able to use and learn about the history of the places that they visit, and we're hoping that we can make use of that and work with ports past and present on that. It is the culmination of 3 years of prior work of working with those communities to understand the local needs. My predecessor, Dale Jones, worked quite closely with a range of partners on Enniscubby to understand what was required and what needed to be developed further. So that landscape heritage and the emphasis on Holy Island. As it says there, the aims and objectives, some of the key features of the island's natural heritage that we're looking at are the agricultural farmlands on the South Stack side, the Penrose Valley and Roscolyn areas. So we'll be working with landowners to identify their key areas and habitats that they need help with. Conserving and managing key features of the island's character, appearance and built heritage. We are working with GAT and CADU in order to recognise some of the scheduled ancient monuments on Enniscubby that need a bit of care and attention. There are also some key buildings on Enniscubby that we're hoping to be able to work on, ranging from old pillboxes to forts as well. So that's an interesting element of the project. And linked to that is the local understanding and pride in Enniscubby's heritage. So by working on those projects that I mentioned, we're going to be engaging with communities and trying to link through to volunteering opportunities that will be available to the people of Enniscubby and Anglesey and wider, should they be interested, to take part in restoring parts of that built and environmental heritage. And obviously Holy Island and Holyhead as a visitor gateway, that's linked to the European funding. So obviously Holyhead is a port, as we've understood already, but it's that link through as a gateway to other places. We have an increasing amount of visits from cruise ships at the moment as well, and we're looking forward to, I think, 26 cruise ships visiting Holyhead this year, even in COVID restricted times. So it's making people who come off the boat to understand what Holy Island has got to offer. The Landscape Partnership is managed by a partnership board. So I'll come on to the partners later on, but there is that overarching partnership board. But in order to help them and assist them as we develop, we have 6 working groups, all with separate remits of what their interest is. So we have an access working group, which will be looking at the links on the public footpaths and the coastal path which circumnavigates Holy Island, and how we can link back into the heritage sites from these public footpaths. There's an educational element to it, so we're working with the secondary school and the primary schools on Enniscubby to try and develop that educational resource as well. And that will be linked to the curriculum and linking through to what we have as hubs. So working with partners like the Maritime Museum to raise awareness of that maritime heritage, working with the University of Bangor on some of the work that they've done on research and mapping of the seabed around Enniscubby and making that accessible. We have the land management element that I've already mentioned, working with people like the RSPB, the North Wales Wildlife Trust to work on heritage sites. There's the built environment working group, which obviously looks at the buildings. And there are the others that are working with the volunteers and engaging with them. I've covered those, so yeah, so we're working forward and looking forward to working with our partners on how we can develop the project. As I said, it's a very early stage, so the working with the partners is key. So these are just some of them: Menteriaeth Môn, Menter Môn, Natural Resources Wales, CADU, One of the key partners for us as we push forward are the Mourne Communities Forward. And they are a key partner because they have the access to many of the hard to reach groups that we'll be needing to work with in order to develop the understanding of the heritage on Enniscubby. And then these are just our contact details. I'm happy to share these with you as we move forward. And Bethan Morris is the project and engagement officer for the scheme. And yes, you're welcome to contact us as you need. Diolch. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, Evan. Hwnna'n great. More diddorol. And actually really nice to have a project that's well on and a project that's just beginning, talking to each other, particularly about coastlines. That's fantastic. I'm going to hand over to Liz here because I noticed a couple of things popping up in the chat. Liz, are there questions from our audience that we would like to share? We've got a good 10 minutes to talk about some of these issues now. So anything come up?
Yeah, so we've got a question from one of our artists, Gilly Brownson. And Gilly's asking a question for Evan, asking whether the new project on the island seeks to research the hut circles at Porth Dyfar, and they're currently unmarked. I don't know anything about these hut circles, but maybe Evan could tell us a bit more about them.
Evan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I just realised I was on mute, sorry. So Enniscubby has a range of hut circles. Some have been excavated and some are quite visible and accessible. Others, like the ones in Porth Dyfar, which is a small port, well, it's a small beach between Lladdir Bay and South Stack. It was used for postal services at one time. But there are a sequence of hut circles in Porth Dyfar which are not visible and aren't interpreted at all. So one of the projects will be looking at that, yes, is the short answer.
Great, thank you.
But as I said, it's a 4-year project, so that will probably be something that we're looking at in years 3 or 4.
Brilliant. Liz, a question for Sarah, I think.
Yeah, question from Matthew Mead. Question for Sarah. You mentioned developing products to make some places more accessible, and Matthew would like to know what sort of products are these, please?
Yeah, thank you. So the sorts of things that we've been using are developing 3D models. So when we've surveyed sites, been able to develop 3D models of those. In some cases, for Dinas Dynllyd, we've produced 3D printed models to highlight the heritage that we can use in exhibitions, but also using tools like Sketchfab, which online tools to provide virtual tours, and we've done some of those for some of us for Dinas Dynllyd and for I think for Caerphilly as well, and a couple of our sites in Pembrokeshire. So we're trialing out some of these things that we can use as ways of bringing some of that heritage which may not be easy to get to, but to provide some information that can be accessed either remotely or at physical exhibitions as well, and to be able to tell a more visual story about some of those sites. And we're also working with a Danish technical company to provide descriptions of images from our exhibitions as well, to make some of that more accessible. So there's an app that you can use that will provide richer descriptions and information about some of the images, and that's worked with the Royal Commission and the Discovery Programme. Those are some of the ideas that we're developing.
Thanks, Sarah. That's really interesting. I think accessibility is a really key issue for anybody who's interested in heritage and tourism, and sustainability and protecting sites and the environment. one of the glories of Wales, of course, is its coast path, coming up for its 10-year birthday, I believe, soon. But it's not accessible to everybody. Not everybody can walk all those stretches and see the things along the way, along the coast. And I think the way we're now able to harness digital technology is really exciting. I think that's actually proving something that allows us to share quite in-depth understanding of places. Liz, were there any other key questions coming up in the chat there for this session?
That's it for now, I think, unless there's anybody out there who would like to ask their question now.
You're also very welcome to just put your hand up and talk to us directly if anybody would like to say anything to join in the conversation at this point. Aoife, can you see any hands? No, give you a minute.
I don't see any.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Sarah and Evan, have you actually made any contact at a sort of official level? I mean, are your projects able to speak to each other in tandem or to share ideas?
We haven't met officially, no, so it's very nice to hear more about your project, Evan, and I think there are some interesting links there. I mean, we don't have any specific sites on Caiga, on Holyhead that we are investigating as part of Church, but we're working more broadly on Anglesey. But I think what was particularly interesting for me was thinking about the weather histories and the storm histories and some of the rich archival material and oral histories that could potentially provide some really nice links as well. So yeah, look forward to hearing more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Evan?
Yeah, no, as Sarah said, we haven't worked together yet, but certainly there is quite a big crossover in what the Cherish programme is doing with what we would like to do and like to interpret on Enniscorthy. So I can see that there are quite close links. So it'd be grateful if you could share Sarah's details, please.
Absolutely.
So that we can arrange to have a discussion separate to this meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. Yeah. I mean, I think one of my favourite characters from Ynys is William Bulkley, who his 18th century diaries provide a fascinating account of social history in Anglesey, but also he wrote about the weather every single day. And colleagues on the Llyn Natur project, which is part of the Cymdeithas Edward Lloyd, have done a fantastic job of developing that as a resource for the community and for researchers and the energy that the people involved in that project. And that's another sort of link there, that this sort of community collation and collection of natural history, weather, heritage that's a fantastic project that I think links in very well as well.
Yeah, another key character there's William Morris in Caergybi, and we're very much hoping in the Ganolfan one day to get a project going editing the letters of the Morris brothers, which have never been fully published, sort of unexpurgated. And I think William Morris is a fantastic natural historian and another man with a keen eye on the weather as a customs official as well. So yeah, a couple more questions have just dropped in. Liz?
Yeah, we've got a question from David Rees about whether there's going to be any work done on the inland sea and the crossings from Pont Rita Bont, and a comment, I suppose more than a question, about the Penrose Velu hut circles previously excavated by William Owen Stanley, which are on private land and are overgrown, so I guess they're not accessible in any way at the moment. I kind of wanted to add something to that comment, and it's a question for both the speakers really. Whether or if at all tourism is in any conflict with some of these aims. I just wondered just thinking about the development of the kind of new resort at Penrose, which is on the woodland area, which is being very much discussed at the moment. I just wondered how tourism does or doesn't kind of come into conflict with some of these project aims for both of your projects. But there's a question as well about sea crossings at Pont Rita Bont.
Yes, I've seen the question from David Rhys Thomas. I'm I'm not aware that there were any specific mentions in the project work for the inland sea and crossings from Pontre de Bons, but I'd be happy to speak to David regarding that to see if we can link it through into some of the interpretation work that we're doing. Obviously, the crossings from Anglesey onto Enniscubby are quite important, and links through to Telford. So, I'd like to, I'm happy to talk to David separately on that. And in terms of tourism and conflict, yes. The Penrose project, I guess, is one that I wouldn't like to get too close to, because obviously working for the county council, there are conflicting issues. But yeah, managing them both is difficult, but there are ways of doing it.
Yeah. I think what both projects demonstrate is the need for very close community engagement.
Yeah.
Talk to as many groups, explain different stages of different projects, and ask for input. And what do people in the area want to see, and how to manage the different strands and interests involved. This was a conversation that came up very much in our Port Fest in Rosslare. And Catherine had some very interesting different perspectives on the massive development that's going on at Rosslare in the wake of new, massive infrastructure things happening there. How do you manage local community and big business along the way? So tourism fits into those things, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And another big development that we're looking at now on Enniscubby is the creation of a new border control post. In light of Brexit, and that has conflicting issues as well, because it's very close to a historical site, a hut burial mound, and site of previous archaeological excavations. So, as development happens, it's always going to come into conflict. But as you said, having those community groups and the engagement with them to understand the history in the first place is going to be a key asset for us.